Jason Candle was at the podium as the Huskies have locked in their roster on this National Signing Day special. We're talking UConn football. This is Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday and welcome back to another episode of Locked On UConn. I am Matt Schonvisky, a two-time graduate, 10-year credentialed media member, and host of the only daily UConn sports podcast, Locked On UConn, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and thank you for making this your first listen each and every single day. On today's show, we are recapping National Signing Day for UConn football. Then, who are some of the key additions that you need to know about? And finally, Eric Kane from Locked On Vols will join to give his perspective after seeing quarterback transfer Jake Merklinger over the last 2 seasons in Knoxville. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So Wednesday saw head coach Jason Candle take the podium for the first time at the football facility in front of the Connecticut media. First time since he's taken over. His first experience with the media was at Rensselaer Field after he was introduced as the Huskies' new head coach. So head coach Jason Candle met with the media on Tuesday, and he was in front of them for about 20 minutes, talking through a number of questions related to his transition to UConn, how he's handled adding so many players to this roster, the complete overhaul, and really taking on this job, what he's seen out of Connecticut, what he's seen out of this institution, what he likes about it, etc. I'm taking 3 or 4 things away from that session with the media from yesterday. Number 1, anytime you see a new coach come in, for the most part, it's a complete overhaul in terms of culture, a complete overhaul of everything that a prior coaching regime had done at a school. Yes, Coach Candle has brought in an entirely new staff. We know that. However, a difference from any of the new coaches that have come in the past, he wants to build off of what was already here. Build off of the success that Coach Jim Mora had instilled in this program over the last 4 years. The back-to-back 9-win seasons. Usually, you got a coach come in and say, we need to tear this down and start from scratch. That's not what Coach Candle's doing. That stood out to me because it means they're attacking year one. In this day and age of college football, we've seen Indiana with Coach Signetti, what they've been able to accomplish over his 2 years there. Immediate success. And in this day and age, with the portal, with being able to bring in a number of players, bring in your own roster, overhaul it year over year, I like what I'm hearing from Coach Candle. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, and this is a big one for me as a football fan, somebody that's been in and around the program, the spring game's coming back. Happy spring. And it sounds like it's going to be at the Rent. It's something that has not transpired since 2017, Randy Edsall's first year back, I want to say, when they experimented with that night fiasco on that Friday night, cold weather, didn't go well. I don't think UConn's been back for a spring game at Rensselaer Field since then. They've been experimenting the last few years under Coach Mora with the soccer stadium on campus. It sounds like Coach Candle wants to be at the stadium in front of the fans to showcase what they're going to try to roll out to put these players in front of the fan base that's going to be playing for them this fall. The approach is completely aligned. And what that signals to me, a lot of coaches nationally have shied away from putting on display spring games because they were afraid players would be poached by other institutions. Those that have not been on the field yet, maybe other coaches are scouting other teams, seeing what UConn would have or what any of these other teams would have, and try to get them to move away from those programs and come to theirs. Anyone in the SEC, in the Big Ten, etc. There's new rules out there that, maybe this helps guard against that. But at the same time, I think it speaks to the confidence that Coach Candle has and his staff has and what they're instilling at UConn, the culture they're putting in place. Because if you have a real strong culture, you're not going to need to be worried about other schools poaching your players. Coach Candle touched on this yesterday as well, that he's got homegrown players at Toledo who came as freshmen, who stuck it through all the way through their senior years. He's got 3 DBs at the combine right now. 3. None of those players bolted for the SEC or bolted for the Big Ten. They stuck around because of the development that Coach Candle has. They stuck around because of the culture that Coach Candle and his staff installed at Toledo. And those are real examples of culture holding out above greed and selfishness. That speaks to the type of player and person that Coach Candle is bringing into his football program. So spring game, they're not shying away. They want to put on full display for the fans exactly what is going to transpire. I'm going to talk more about the spring game probably later today on Thursday. I'll have a separate video come out on that. Third thing, he said this is when speaking about entering into a new situation and having to completely overhaul a roster with the amount of transfers that went out and the amount of new players that he needed to bring in. He said, this is the first time I'm going to have to do this, and it's going to be the last time he's going to have to do this. Again, speaking to the loyalty, his commitment to this institution, to this university, to this football program, to this fan base. I think it's something that this UConn fan base is concerned about. If we have immediate success, are we a stepping stone program? We are not. This is not a stepping stone school. This is a state institution. This is a football program that's had success, has been a pipeline to the NFL. We all know the track record when UConn was in the Big East. They were putting more players into the NFL than any school that's currently in the Big 12. We don't need to rehash the numbers. We all know them, 35. They would have only been behind Texas and Oklahoma, but guess what? They're not in there any longer. They're in the SEC. UConn was more of a pipeline to the league than Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU, BYU, you name it, all the way down. Texas Tech, etc. UConn would have been tops in the Big 12 during that run when UConn was in the Big East. On equal footing, on equal ground with Power 5 institutions, Power 4 institutions. We know that. We've talked about it here on the show. We saw it firsthand, having been in and around the program in 2010, 2011, 2012. Those rosters were loaded with talent. Loaded. From Kendall Reyes, Kashif Moore, Seal Moore, Dwayne Grass, Bleedy Ray Wilson. Right on down that list. Nick Williams. Offensive lineman. Top picks in the CFL. So you just go on down those rosters. The amount of talent that was on those teams. Byron Jones was a backup, for goodness sake. And not being the highest paid corner in the NFL. Jeremy Davis. Ryan Griffin. The list goes on. John Delahunt. Spent time in the CFL. Just the list is long. It speaks to, on equal footing, what this institution, this football program can do when they have the right amount of resources and they have a leader that knows how to run the ship the right way. And then the final thing that Coach Candle that caught my attention yesterday, and we'll talk more about football, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to try to get Coach Candle on the show. He talked about 3 things that stood out to me that all lead to success. He talked about communication. He talked about trust. He talked about respect. All those 3 things is what he looks for in the people he brings in. People first. Coaching staff, players, because it all ties into what you want to do here. Because when you get the talent, you need the right type of person that's going to say, hey, UConn's my place. Coach Candle's my guy. I'm not looking elsewhere, because this is the place, and I trust in the coaching staff that's brought me here to develop me and put me in the best position to be successful where I want to be in my professional career. So Candle, for me, checked all the boxes yesterday. It wasn't about highlighting, hey, look at what we've done. He was asked that, 3 or 4 times yesterday? It wasn't about me. Kind of like what I talked about with the unselfishness of the football or the basketball program yesterday. It was about the collective. It was about building this program and focusing on what's best for this team, these players, the staff, the school. And being in the moment, not looking ahead to, he was asked about the schedule. He hasn't given it a thought. He's focused on what's best for this program right now as he comes in and puts his mark on UConn football. So that's just a quick recap of yesterday's Coach Candle press conference. On the other side, there's been a number of key pieces that UConn added to this roster. National Signing Day, a number officially signed with the school. We'll be back and we'll highlight who you should be aware of after this.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukeledge and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because
back in on this signing day special, and we are recapping exactly who you need to be aware of. What UConn brought in from a signing day standpoint, a transfer portal standpoint, as Coach Candle continues to build out and finalize this roster for this upcoming season. Let's go down the list. Offense, we'll start there. Quarterback, we have 3 new quarterbacks. One is transferring in from Toledo, Caleb Osborne, as you know. Started the bowl game against Louisville, got better as the game went on against his first competition at the P4 level. Also coming in is Jake Merklinger. We're going to talk to Locked On Vols, Eric Kane, about what Merklinger did at Tennessee over his 2 years there. But he's coming in from the SEC. Transfer from Tennessee. Learned under Coach Heupel, one of the best quarterback coaches you could find. So it's a great addition to this roster and this quarterback room. Also coming in, Bo Polston, high school kid from the state of Indiana. So those 3 added to Tucker McDonald, who is staying here at UConn. So 3 quarterbacks coming in, 4 total with Tucker still here. And that's what you've got here at UConn at the quarterback position. Running back, 6 new players coming in, including transfers from Northwestern, Syracuse, player that started his career at Tulane, West Virginia, and then another player that started his career at Virginia Tech, in addition to another Toledo transfer. So a lot of talent, a lot of guys that coming out of high school, very highly regarded at the running back position. Wide receiver, 10 of them coming in, including a transfer from Oklahoma State, from Syracuse, and then several from Toledo. Offensive line, this is a huge thing to focus on. Obviously, as your offensive line goes, so does normally your offense. The biggest thing that I see in the 10 players that UConn's bringing in with the line, size, huge, big bodies. That's something that stands out to me. A surprise yesterday, UConn flipped an Iowa State commit. Obviously, Matt Campbell's off to Penn State. In comes Jason Candle, 6'8", 310-pound true freshman coming in. Also bringing in players from Louisville via the portal. Rutgers started his career at Rutgers, transferring from Toledo. A Virginia Tech transfer. And then another player from from Toledo that began his career at Pitt. So 10 players coming in on the offensive line, and size is the word of the day when it comes to the players up front. Tight ends, not as many. 3 coming in, including 1 transfer from Boston College. So that's your offense. You have 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 10 receivers, 10 offensive linemen, 3 tight ends. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball. 13 guys coming in for the D-line. 13. Including transfers from Texas, Duke, Oregon State, Michigan State, then landed at Toledo. So transferred from Michigan State to Toledo. Also directly from NC State and Ohio State. Big targets, big gets, especially when you're thinking of pulling guys from Texas and Ohio State. Mickens at the end, I'm very excited to see what he could do when we see them in the spring. Linebacker, we've got 10 players, including transfers from West Virginia, NC State, and Oregon State. And then defensive backs, 16 players coming in. You flipped a kid from Syracuse at the initial signing day. You got a Rutgers transfer, a transfer from USC, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Duke. So you're bringing in a lot of talent, a lot of guys from the P4 level. Some played, some haven't. But it's the talent that's coming in that is saying, Coach Campbell's the coach for me. UConn is the place for me. So just to run through the defense again, 13 on the D-line, 10 linebackers, and 16 defensive backs. The biggest, obviously, question heading into next year. Joe Fagnano graduating, moving on. We'll see what happens with the professional ranks. UConn's got to replace quarterbacks. One of those quarterbacks, we reached out to Locked On Vols. He's coming from Tennessee. We talked extensively on signing day with Eric Kane to learn more about Jake Merklinger, and you'll hear that interview after the break. Oh. Bear with me, just getting the ad up. All right, Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed-sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. That's what we like in my company about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Again, if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Back in for the final segment on today's National Signing Day special. And to talk further about one of the key additions that head coach Jason Candle is bringing in to help bolster this UConn football roster is Eric Kane from Locked On Vols. Appreciate you hopping in.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So a big splash that UConn has made and that Jason Candle made since his arrival is quarterback Jake Merklinger. Obviously, spent 2 years with the Tennessee program, high-profile quarterback coming out of Savannah, Georgia, when he committed to the Vols. What would be a word or two that you would use to describe him?
Yeah, I think he's got. I think he's smart first and foremost. I think he's got a really good head on his shoulders. I think that he's got ability. Would be another one. He didn't have a lot of opportunities to showcase it here at Tennessee. He was involved in a quarterback battle this offseason, so that's the most that we heard and talked and saw from and all that with him because, when he got here in 2024, he sat behind Nico Iamaleava and Gaston Moore, who was a long-time, reserve quarterback, so he was the third string. Nico leaves at the end of spring ball last year, and so there was a lot of questions. Is it going to be Jake Merklinger? Could it be incoming freshman George McIntyre? Well, Tennessee has to add somebody. What kind of quarterback can Tennessee add? Of course, they had Joey Aguilar. Three of those guys battle it out. Aguilar wins and goes on. He's the starting quarterback. But, I think Merklinger, showed pretty well, and we can talk about this more in a moment, but I thought he performed really well in that battle and kind of showed that he can play at this level. But I think he's smart. I think he's got ability. Just didn't get a whole lot of game repetitions here at Tennessee during his 2-year run with the Vols.
You mentioned a QB battle with Joey Aguilar. What stood out to you from the sidelines? Any opportunities you had a chance to watch him in terms of how he competed with Aguilar? And I assume he came in second in that battle. I don't know if he was the backup, but it's the fact that he did get on the field last season. I assume he did. So what stood out to you during that competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the way that he approached it with a pro mindset, knowing that, just because he was in the system longer than the freshman at that time, and and then, of course, Joey Aguilar, who transferred in May, didn't guarantee him a starting job or whatever. They were going to battle it out. And, I mean, obviously, I think he had a better grasp on the offense than the other two. I think that he could see it and read it a little bit better early on. And, he put together a couple really good weeks, man, of training camp. I think Joey, obviously, it was the right call. Joey Aguilar went on to lead the SEC in passing this year. Really good story. He had played a lot. He had just, seen those battles. And, it ultimately ended up being the right call. But I thought, from a consistency standpoint, I thought Jake Merklinger showed very well in camp, and the ability to push the ball down the field a little bit. He's not a runner. I'm not trying to make him out to be as a dual threat guy, but I think he's a little bit deceptive in that regard. I think that he can go and put his head down and get a first down marker, or if he's getting pressure for the backside, tuck it and run. I think that ability is there. He's not just a statue back there. But no, he put together some really good practices, stacking days, if you will. Ultimately, they went with the veteran, and it turned out to be the right call. But I think that he showed well. He didn't get dusted. He didn't get embarrassed. It was a legit quarterback competition that Joey Aguilar won about a week before the opener.
And he did get on the field during the regular season, mop-up duty, of course, but he did throw for a couple of touchdowns. What can you say about him and his ability to build a rapport with his receivers and how he responded when he did see some time?
Yeah, he came in. Joey Aguilar, I can't remember what game it was. I want to say it might have been Arkansas game at home. Fell on the football, kind of took the breath out of him a little bit, and Merklinger went straight in and led a couple of plays down the field. And Aguilar came back, and ultimately Tennessee scored that drive. But no fear. Just went out there and ran the offense, carried out his face. I think he ran the football one time. When he got into mop-up duty, again, it's a guy that knows the system, knows the offense. When you get into a game in that type of setting, you're playing and throwing to receivers that you throw to in practice all the time. So I think the rapport was there as well. But, in fall camp, when we got the season practice, he was throwing to Chris Brasley, who's going to be a first-round pick, and Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley. Those guys received a lot of recognition from the Southeastern Conference coaches this year. I think he shows the ability that he can connect and kind of lead and kind of be that quarterback for anybody on the roster. So I'm excited for him. There was a chance here at Tennessee, but he was the guy that came in after Nico Iamaleava. And the plan was Nico would be here for 3 years and then go to the NFL. That didn't work out in either case. But like not Joey Aguilar, Jake Merklinger, I don't want to say he was a placeholder because I think that's unfair, but he was the guy after the guy. Mm-hmm. And so there was never really that thought of like Jake Merklinger being the next big thing at Tennessee. It just kind of never materialized that there. Now his progression got sped up a whole year, right? Because Nico left and ultimately he didn't win the job. But still, I'll root the best for him. He was one of the most underrated quarterbacks, in my opinion, in that recruiting class. He was a great, great high school player from the state of Georgia, played at a great high school program, won a ton of games. I think him as a recruit was very underrated, and hopefully he'll get the chance to put all that on display and play consistently.
And then you mentioned he's been there for 2 years. What type of growth did you see from him, whether it was on the field, off the field, in your limited interactions with him that you covering the team?
Yeah, well, I think for any case with anybody going from high school to a collegiate strength and conditioning program, nutrition program, especially in the Southeastern Conference, you put on some LBs in a good way. And I thought he got bigger. I thought he took it seriously. And that's something that Tennessee's struggling with right now with George McIntyre, who I mentioned earlier. Like, he's got to get bigger, and you got to take those steps. I think Jake Merklinger took those steps in order to get his body the way it needed to be to play a 12-game regular season and take the hits and all that. So I think from that standpoint, it was big. I mean, naturally, if you're a quarterback, you're at a leader position. I think he's vocal, probably not the most vocal guy in the room, but a guy that'll speak up, a guy that will lead a group and lead an offense. And I kind of saw that at points in times in fall camp where he was giving his best effort to be the guy, and he was carrying himself like he was the guy. And that's what you like to see, right? Came up short, but you don't want to see anybody shy away from that, and that's not what Jake Merklinger did. So, and then just the natural progressions, right? He hasn't played a lot in games, but you go against the same guys in practice and you rep at game speed. I think that his ability to process information at a fast clip really grew from spring year 1 to spring year 2 because you've seen it every day for a year, and that's natural for anybody. The speed of the game is just so different. So he took those steps, I think, from a throwing standpoint. Doesn't have the strongest arm. I think he's more accurate than an arm strength, if you will, but I wouldn't say his arm strength is a negative whatsoever. So, he took some steps in those regard, and I'm intrigued to kind of see what the end result is for a guy like Jake Merklinger.
And then Coach Heupel, QB, obviously in his own right. Just what was his perception of Merklinger during the quarterback battle? What did he have to say about him during the process?
Yeah, a lot of things I'm saying right now. I mean, he liked the way he responded. I mean, when your starting quarterback says deuces, I'm out, literally the last day of spring ball, I mean, at least your team in shambles, right? It's like, oh crap, what are we going to do? I mean, there were teammates that wanted to go scorch earth in that press conference after the spring game. There were guys that were like, well, what's going on now? Are we going to be awful? There was just a lot of commotion and confusion, right? And to turn to two guys, say, okay, well, I guess you're up now. And for them to answer the questions at the podium, again, Nico left like a Saturday morning. Tennessee had a spring game that afternoon.
Wow.
And so Jake Merklinger was Tennessee's starting quarterback that day, went to the podium, had to answer questions from people like me. Again, don't shy away from it. Run into it. I like the way he handled that whole day, and I think Josh Heupel reflected that as well. And then just kind of the way he went to work in the offseason workouts, the way he handled Joey Aguilar joining the team and coaching up Joey Aguilar, teaching him the offense and stuff. I think it's, he's a really, really good kid, a good teammate, and that's something that Josh Heupel said a lot of times because, Jake Merklinger wanted to be the guy. I'm sure he wasn't pleased. I mean, as the competitor inside, you weren't pleased when Tennessee went out and got a guy. They had to for numbers' sake, but, you weren't pleased when you weren't named the starting quarterback, but what are you going to do? How are you going to respond? What are you going to do about it from there? And, Jake Merklinger stayed ready. He went in a couple of times when Aguilar got hurt or, lost his breath for a couple of minutes, mop-up duty and all that. I think if Aguilar were to have missed extended time, I would have been curious. Jake Merklinger was the backup quarterback, but would they have played both those younger guys? I don't know. We don't ever know that, but when the helmet popped off, when somebody had to go in for Aguilar, it was Jake Merklinger, and I thought he handled it pretty well.
So it sounds like UConn's getting a guy, personal qualities, leadership qualities that he can develop into based on everything, the experience that he had at Tennessee and how he handled that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not. Who's to say it's going to work? Who's to say he's going to fail? I don't know. I don't know the end game for Jake Merklinger, but I think he's got all the ability in the world. I think he's got the intangibles in the world. I think he's got the experiences of watching and playing behind Nico Iamaleava, went to a college football playoff, watched an older guy, Joey Aguilar, how he went about his business, was a part of some of the best strength and conditioning and nutrition programs, learned from one of the best quarterback coaches in all the country, as you mentioned, Josh Heupel. I think he's prepared what he took from Tennessee to go and, really be the guy. I mean, I would assume that he's going to be competing for the job. What's the feel like? Did everybody think that you went out and got your quarterback in the transfer portal?
Yeah, they've got him, and then they've also got Caleb Osborne, a freshman coming in who started the bowl game for Toledo. So it seems like it's going to be a battle between those two. Yeah, well, he's been in a battle before. He's a year older, so I'm excited to see and hoping the best for him to go out there and win that job. Yeah, well, that's Eric Kane. Appreciate you hopping in and talk a little about Jake Merklinger and the impact they could potentially have here at UConn Football. Yeah, appreciate it. Hey, stop beating up on Lady Vols, all right? 30 points, that's too much. Too much. That wraps up today's show. As we close, please hit the like and subscribe button. And thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On UConn. If you're an everydayer and never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more. All built for our most loyal fans. Visit LockedOnPodcast.com/everydayerclub. As the week continues, we will be recapping Wednesday night's women's win, and stay tuned for a full preview with Dave Borges of the big Friday night matchup against St. John's at MSG. As always, go Huskies!